At 81, Jimmy Hart finally confirms the rumors that have followed him for decades. The mouth of the South has always been surrounded by whispers. Fans talked about messy lawsuits. They spread stories about erratic behavior. Some claimed he had substance abuse problems. For years, these rumors grew bigger and darker. But what's really true about Jimmy Hart? What's been blown out of proportion and what's completely made up? Today, we're digging deep into the real story of one of wrestling's most controversial figures. Jimmy Hart built a career on being loud, annoying, and hard to ignore. But behind that megaphone and those bright suits, there's a man who managed to stay in the spotlight for over 4 decades. The question is, how did he do it? And what secrets has he been hiding? Before Jimmy Hart ever picked up that famous megaphone, he was making music. Born on January 1st, 1944 in Jackson, Mississippi, Hart wasn't always the wrestling manager we know today. He was the lead singer of a 1960s garage rock band called the Gentrys. This wasn't just some small-time band playing local clubs. The Gentrys hit it big in 1965 with their single, Keep On Dancing. The song shot up to number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. It sold over 1 million copies. The band appeared on popular TV shows like Hullabaloo and Shindig. Jimmy Hart was already learning how to work a crowd. He was mastering the art of being loud and getting attention. These skills would serve him well later in wrestling. But Hart didn't stay in music forever. His transition to wrestling came through an old high school friend, Jerry the King Lawler. Hart helped Lawler with a record for the Memphis wrestling TV show. This was Hart's first taste of the wrestling business. He fell in love with it immediately. The over-the-top personalities, the dramatic storylines, the crowd reactions. It was perfect for someone who already knew how to perform. Hart quickly became Lawler's manager in Memphis wrestling. His loud, confident personality was perfect for playing the villain. He adopted the megaphone as his signature weapon. It wasn't just for show. Hart used it to shout instructions to his wrestlers. He used it to annoy opponents and commentators. Sometimes he even used it as a weapon to help his guys win matches. Hart's big break in Memphis came with the legendary feud between Jerry Lawler and comedian Andy Kaufman. Hart worked closely with Kaufman, teaching him the psychology of wrestling. Their rivalry with Lawler became a huge draw. It all came to a head with an unscripted fight on Late Night with David Letterman that captivated the whole nation. Hart was right in the middle of it all, stirring up controversy and getting attention. In 1985, Hart made the jump to the big time. He joined the World Wrestling Federation, where owner Vince McMahon immediately dubbed him the Mouth of the South. Hart's arrival marked the beginning of what many call the golden age of wrestling management. But Hart wasn't content to just stand in the corner and cheer. He had to be the center of attention. Hart's signature look became iconic. Bright, outlandish suits that hurt your eyes to look at. That ever-present megaphone that never seemed to leave his hand. He called himself a manager of champions, but critics saw something else. They saw a man who was always looking for ways to insert himself into the spotlight. Hart wasn't just managing wrestlers, he was making sure everyone knew he was there. The list of wrestlers Hart managed reads like a who's who of WWF champions. The Honky Tonk Man held the Intercontinental Championship for a record-setting 15 months with Hart in his corner. Hart guided the Hart Foundation to the WWF World Tag Team title in 1987. He formed the tag team Money Inc. with Ted DiBiase and Erwin Archester, who won the tag titles twice. But here's the thing about Jimmy Hart's success. He always seemed to attach himself to wrestlers who were already on their way up. Greg the Hammer, Valentine, the Nasty Boys, the Natural Disasters. These weren't nobodies that Hart built from scratch. These were established talents who Hart managed to weasel his way into managing. He had a talent for spotting winners and making sure he got credit for their success. Hart was named Pro Wrestling Illustrated's Manager of the Year in 1987 and again in 1994. The Wrestling Observer newsletter also gave him awards. But fans always wondered, was Hart really that good at managing? Or was he just good at picking the right horses to bet on? What most fans don't know is that Hart had another way of controlling wrestlers' careers. He was secretly composing and producing many of the entrance themes that defined the WWF era. This gave him incredible power behind the scenes. Hart wrote Shawn Michaels' iconic Sexy Boy theme. He composed the high-energy theme for the NWO Wolfpack in WCW. He created themes for the Hart Foundation, the Honky Tonk Man, and many others. This wasn't just Hart being helpful. This was Hart making sure he had his fingers in every pie. By controlling the music, he controlled part of each wrestler's identity. These themes became integral parts of the wrestlers' characters, and Hart made sure he got paid every time they were used. He wasn't just a wrestling manager dabbling in music. He was using his musical background to create another stream of income and influence. Hart's music work extended across both WWF and WCW. He wrote American Made for Hulk Hogan. He created the $1 Million Man theme for Ted DiBiase. He even wrote I'm the Mountie for the Mountie. Every time one of these songs played, Jimmy Hart was making money. Every time a wrestler walked to the ring, Hart was profiting from their success. Now let's talk about those rumors that have followed Hart for years. Fans have always whispered about a messy lawsuit between Hart and the WWF. They claimed it was about royalties and that Hart was cheated out of money. Some people spread stories about Hart's erratic behavior and substance abuse problems. These rumors got so big that many fans just accepted them as fact. But here's what actually happened. There's no evidence of Jimmy Hart ever personally suing the WWF. None. The rumors appear to be a case of mistaken identity. Fans were confusing Hart with other wrestlers who did have legal battles with the company. Jesse "The Body" Ventura did sue the WWF's parent company, Titan Sports, in 1991. Ventura won over $800,000 in a case about royalties from videotapes featuring his commentary. There was also the tragic wrongful death lawsuit brought by Owen Hart's family after his accident in 1999. That case resulted in an $18 million settlement and got tons of media attention. The WWF was involved in other major scandals during the 1990s. There was the federal steroid trial against Vince McMahon himself. There were allegations of sexual abuse in the Ring Boy scandal. With all this legal chaos swirling around the company, it's easy to see how fans might assume that other high-profile figures like Jimmy Hart were also involved in personal drama. But Hart somehow managed to stay out of the courtroom. This wasn't necessarily because he was innocent of everything. It might have been because he was smart enough to keep quiet and let others take the heat. While his colleagues were fighting legal battles, Hart was quietly building his empire and staying under the radar. The substance abuse allegations are harder to pin down. There's no direct proof, but many people in the industry have painted Hart as unpredictable and difficult to work with. His high-pitched cackle and over-the-top personality led some to wonder what was fueling his behavior. Was it all an act, or was there something more going on behind the scenes? When Hart left the WWF, he followed his biggest meal ticket, Hulk Hogan. Hart moved to World Championship Wrestling, where he continued managing Hogan. He guided Hogan to his first WCW World Heavyweight title victory at Bash at the Beach in 1994. Once again, Hart was attaching himself to the biggest star in the company, but Hart's role in WCW went beyond just standing at ringside. He was also a member of the WCW booking committee. This gave him power behind the scenes to influence storylines and decide who got pushed and who got buried. Critics saw this as Hart manipulating the system to keep himself relevant. He wasn't just managing wrestlers, he was pulling strings in the back office. Hart's position on the booking committee showed his true nature. He always made sure he stayed close to the power centers in whatever company he worked for. Whether it was Vince McMahon in the WWF or the booking committee in WCW, Hart knew how to position himself to survive and thrive. After WCW was sold, Hart made appearances in other promotions like Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, but he eventually found his way back to WWE, where he signed a Legends contract. This keeps him appearing at major events even today. Hart has managed to maintain his relevance in wrestling for over 4 decades. In 2005, Hart was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. This should have been the ultimate validation of his career. But even with this honor, the rumors and whispers continue to follow him. Fans still debate whether Hart deserves the recognition or if he just managed to fool everyone for long enough. Hart continues to make appearances at events like Raw Legends Night and WWE Raw anniversaries, usually alongside his old friend Hulk Hogan. These appearances keep him in the public eye and remind fans of his lasting impact on the business. So at 81, what has Jimmy Hart finally confirmed about those decades-old rumors? The truth is both simpler and more complex than the stories suggest. Hart never faced a personal lawsuit with the WWF. He was never officially caught with substance abuse issues, but he did thrive in an industry where chaos, lawsuits, and scandals swirled around him constantly. Hart's real talent wasn't just managing wrestlers or writing entrance themes. His greatest skill was surviving. In a business known for chewing up and spitting out its performers, Hart found ways to stay relevant for 4 decades. He attached himself to the right people. He positioned himself in the right places. He made himself useful in multiple ways. Jimmy Hart's legacy in professional wrestling is undeniable. He helped define the golden age of wrestling management. He created some of the most memorable entrance themes in wrestling history. He guided numerous wrestlers to championship success. But the whispers, rumors, and doubts will always be part of his story too. Whether you see him as a creative genius or an opportunistic manipulator, Probably depends on your perspective. What's certain is that Jimmy Hart knew how to work the system better than almost anyone else in wrestling history. And maybe that's the most impressive accomplishment of all.